Welcome back to Counterculture, where we take a look at things maybe a little upside down, a little backwards, a little left, right, not right, left. We look at things differently. How can we as Christians kind of buck the system, go against the grain, right? So lots of things that have come to mind about this, especially in the world that we live in right now. There seems to be opportunities all the time for us to think differently and not just follow the trail of doofuses over the cliff. Now, you being a doctor, like, you know exactly what I mean. We were joking around this morning about doofuses and like, hey, when is
Which
it okay?
the plural of doofus is doofy.
Is doofy,
Doofy.
right? And we came up with a whole bunch of stuff that probably will make a episode sooner rather than later. But on a little more serious note,
Right.
I want to look at Ezekiel chapter 33. I was talking about this with Summer the other day and a good friend Bill, and just lots of thoughts came out, and I thought, I need to get the doctor's opinion of this, right? So while you're looking for the doctor and pulling him out. Let me. Can
I do it if I'm not doctor and just talk about it or not? Do I have to do it as doctor?
You can just be Mark.
I can be me. Oh, I can.
Just Mark.
Only I can be me and get it right.
That's right.
All right.
Otherwise,
And
it's
only
just
you
the
can be you
Andy
and get it
show.
right.
It's not
Right.
the Andy and Mark
Yeah.
show. Right, here we go. Verse 10. Ezekiel 33 says this, "And you, son of man, say to the house of Israel, thus have you said, surely our transgression and our sins are upon us, and we rot away because of them." I could get stuck there, but we're not going to. "How then can we live? Say to them, as I live, declares the Lord God, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. Turn back from your evil ways, for why will you die, O house of Israel?" Let's stop there because I'm not going to get farther than there, most likely.
Wow.
Counterculture
Yes.
is right here in this world. In this world that God has created and set up. In these verses, God specifically says, I don't take pleasure in the death of the wicked, Pastor Mark. Yet we hear Christians all the time making great statements about how the wicked deserve death. Does it not seem that that is counter what God is about, at least on face value?
Oh, wow, you just nailed it. I do not understand. Years ago, I was not there to see this, but I've been told about it. There was a theologian who had been brought in, not any of the ones that probably most of you have heard from, but anyway, and they were at this place, eating establishment, and one person goes bebopping up to them and tried to trap him, and said, "Well, why aren't you worried about people or why don't you think it's important that people go to hell?"
Yeah.
Because she was trying to, something he said, and he says, "Why are you so concerned about making sure someone does?"
Yep.
It was to that effect, and I remember that because it's like, well, they'll get theirs, And it's very troubling to me. This is a great passage. There's more for me to highlight there because it's sad that we should be sad. Mm-hmm. We should be concerned that there are people who are not following the Lord, who are wicked in God's eyes because they're not doing. Like it or not, there is a wonderful scene in either the book or the movie, The Shack. Some of you are turn me off. Don't turn me off. If you haven't read it or seen it, don't criticize it till you. Okay, there's a wonderful scene when the main character goes before a person named Wisdom. Okay, Sophia is her name, and Wisdom. And she confronts him about how God is not just, and He's not making certain people go to hell that should go to hell. And in the grand, it's a wonderful story or scene rather, because in the end she says, "Okay, you have to decide." And she said that includes you have to decide between your kids which ones go to heaven and which ones don't.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, I can't do that." And eventually comes a point where he says, spoiler alert, "I'll go in their place."
Yep.
Which is the whole point of Christ coming.
Exactly.
we can get frustrated with the doofuses,
Yep.
okay? The people that we disagree with, that we see are just, as only a fool says there is no God,
Yep.
okay?
Yep.
So we could argue that anybody says there is no God is a doofus, although they think we're doofuses, doofy because we do. Bottom line is the people that we disagree with, the people that we consider our enemies, are really not our enemies. The enemy is the enemy. The enemy is Satan, okay? The people that we disagree with, who we see doing evil. There's a lot of talk of that right now. What's going on in our world over in Ukraine and Russia? Well, Putin is evil. Well, then some say, well, no, the Ukraine guy is evil. Well, this one's evil. Anybody who doesn't in our culture today, anybody who doesn't agree with us is evil.
Exactly.
There's going to be someone because I referenced the shack is going to say I'm evil because I did. Okay, no, just
Well, you're not a Christian.
Cool your jet. Exactly. And to pray, this is putting me into conviction. Am I praying for them to come to Christ, to not be wicked, but to turn? I love mine. Mine says, the Nazarene Infallible Version says, but rather that they would turn from their ways and live. Turn from your evil ways. Why will you die, O house of Israel? Now he's talking, O house of Israel,
His people.
Woo! There's another. That throws a wrench in the sprockets.
So again,
was that a right analogy?
it is a true statement.
It
Or a
is.
screwdriver in the socket.
There you
So
go. There you go. All right.
I think, I mean, man, you hit again right on it, right? We have people who are praying that God would take people like Putin out. That's not that's not his intent, right? His intent, based on this, is he wants them to turn.
Yes.
He wants them to come to know him, right? Is that going to erase all of the damage, all the hurt that he's done? No, but God wanted Paul to turn. What if God had answered the cry of Christians' hearts at that time and taken out Paul?
Well, exactly. Well, okay, so let's go to Bonhoeffer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for those of you who other people call it Bonhoeffer, but I believe it's Bonhoeffer is the correct German pronunciation. It doesn't matter. You know who I'm talking about. There's a debate. Was he wrong for conspiring to take out Hitler?
Mm-hmm.
Or how about going there and trying? Now, we get upset because we're like, why doesn't God do anything about evil in the world? Well, he does. Yeah, but I don't want him doing it that way. I don't want him taking people out. Well, you don't get to decide how he does it. But ultimately, the way that we should want God to deal with evil in the world is to turn people from it.
That's right. So again, the problem with wanting God to do something about evil in the world is it has to start with me.
Yes.
So
well, I was thinking it had to start with you too.
That's right. I think it's funny. In doofus land, right? In doofus land,
which we all visit every now and then.
If we're all living there, does it matter if you're the king or if you're the stall man? Like, does it matter?
The old
you're
lamplighter.
In doofus
the
land.
old lamplighter.
That's
yes,
right.
Yeah.
If you're in doofus land, great. You're the king of the doofuses. Well, you're still there. Right? So again, I think the problem is we don't have that concept anymore. We refuse to believe that we are just as much in need of Jesus as the next person. Yeah. And so that's what causes the problem. But because we're not Christ-like in nature, it's really hard to get to this place, isn't it? Where we look at our enemy and we say, hey, my number one concern for you is that you turn from your evil ways. So when we go to the store, right, like again, I'm going to use this as an example. We're looking for a car. We've visited lots of car places in the last few weeks. Bad time to be buying cars, right? If I walk into a car place and really believe that some car salesperson is an evil person and they're trying to do wrong things, do I go out and tell everybody how evil that person is and stay away from them? Or do I pray for that person to turn so that they would become a good car salesperson, right? So that they would be helpful to people. Our initial reaction is always to go out and lambaste them and say, hey, make sure you don't go buy a car from here because this guy is awful, right? No, we need to be praying and turning. The heart of Christ wasn't to point out what terrible sinners we were. Right. It was to do something about it.
And is that not what we do in the church, though, too? Well, I used to go to church. I used to go to Andy's church. Yes. But, he's just not a good pastor.
No, not a good
person. So now we're going to, so now I'm going to go to, so you go to 5 different churches, and all of them have bad pastors. Mm-hmm. So the conclusion is that all pastors are bad, right? No, or as John Maxwell would say, no, if Andy and Mark have a problem, Andy and Bob have a problem, Andy and Mel have a problem, Andy and whoever have a problem, Andy and Dale have a problem, guess who's got the problem?
Yeah.
Not all those 5 pastors. It's probably Andy.
See, but again, we live in a
And because
culture.
we don't want to look at our own.
Right.
So take the speck out of your own eye before you take the plank out of your own eye before you take the speck out of your neighbor's.
No, it's much easier to take the speck out.
Yes, look over there. Hey, y'all, don't be looking over here. Look over here. Andy.
Do you know the problem with the whole plank in your eye is? You can only look out the peripheral vision and see other people. That's the problem, right? The problem with the plank is it stops you looking ahead and makes you have to look this way. So I'm concentrating on other people for that reason alone, because that's all that my sight will let me see when I have a
Well,
plank in my eye.
and for myself, I don't have time to work on myself because I got too many other people I got to straighten out.
Well, that's exactly right. The only way
It's the pastor who left the ministry and became a funeral director. He goes, now when I get them straightened out, I keep them straightened out.
See, that is fantastic. That's super fantastic.
Yeah.
Listen, I think it's a great place. Make this a
Love it.
shorter
Love it.
counterculture. Read Ezekiel 33, 10 through 12, and it ought to be convicting to you, right? Are you praying for God to remove the evil person, or are you praying for God to help turn the evil person?
Pastor statement. Are you praying for God to remove the evil person or remove the evil from the person? Come on. Come on.
That is a great place.
That's a pastor
to lead.
quote, is that not?
It is. Counterculture. You should probably
That
go
is screenworthy.
It is. Jamestown Church of the Nazarene.
Yes.
Probably Pastor Mark will be preaching that in a Sunday to come.
Probably.
It's fantastic.
We'll let you know.
Hey, we'll see you next time. Counterculture.
Grace and peace.